Hello and welcome everybody. I am joined today by Eric Anger and Mark Trappigan. Travis is there, he's behind the screen. We've just been having a really interesting conversation and it's going to be a fascinating one about the future of Google, future of search. So, coming across, Mark, look at this, in the same room together. How good is this?
There you go.
How awesome can you get in the same hangar? Okay. Let's talk about this. Where are you guys? And people know who you are, but let's talk about business for a second. What do you do?
As little as possible. That's
You're not much to say that, Mark.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
I think it's not the true answer for sure.
Do I have to work on my messaging here?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, well, we're a digital marketing agency. We do SEO, content marketing, social media. We help businesses make more money from the web and the internet, both.
There we go. Stone Temple Consulting, this pair are from.
Yes,
wow.
right.
Good to see you both, and you go around the country speaking on subjects such as search and what's going on. So let's start with that. What is happening at the minute? What's going on with search? What's the mood out there with changes?
Well, yeah, I love the question about the mood. You want to take that one?
The mood today is purple, as you can see. We're setting it we were joking before the show that I was just going to add color commentary, so I'm just going to assign a color to every topic that we have today. But there's a lot of excitement. There's also a lot of uncertainty about the future and things. We're sensing this at the conferences that we visit, where we talk, listening to other speakers, but especially talking to other pros, in parties and in the hallways between sessions. That what we're hearing is that so many things that we've taken for granted in this business of online marketing, digital marketing, for the longest time are now being shaken and rattled in significant ways. And paradigms that we thought would always be around and just always be givens are being seen as not necessarily givens anymore. I think we're going to be talking about a number of those things in the show today.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I agree. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and but a lot of excitement, because change is good for people who are good at adapting to change and helping other people understand it and figure out what to do with it.
Well, one of the things I love here, just quickly as a metaphor, is if you go to our main conference room here at Stone Temple headquarters, we had put up a large graphic of a breaking wave, a cresting wave. It kind of dominates the room, and we love telling people when they come in, and the 6 new employees that we brought in this week, telling the story of what that wave is. It's not just a decoration; it has meaning to us, and that is that we build our business on trying to be ahead of the wave, not in the wave, but see where's the wave going and be ahead of that, and that's where we try to bring value to our clients by helping them not just to adjust to, oh my God, this happened, now what do we do, but this is coming. Here's how we prepare. Here's how we get ready for that.
Well, let's start with that then. So what is going on? Myself and Eric, we were just mentioning, we were talking about the knowledge box, and we're just talking about an example of how things have changed in search. Let's give some stats and some meat to the bone, shall we, Eric? Okay, we're going
to get some meat to the bone. Yeah, no, happy to do that. So for people who don't know, we published last February a study where we looked at 855,000 different Google search queries to see how many returned a rich answer box, or what some people call a direct answer, or a knowledge box. But it's one of those little boxes that appears above the normal search results and tries to directly address the user's question without their having to click through to a website. And when we did that study, it showed right around 20% of the queries that we tried would return one of these rich answers. So we've rerun it, and I'm sharing actually today data that we actually haven't published yet. It's publishing next Wednesday, and that number is just slightly over 30% of queries for the exact same 855,000 queries. So almost a 50% increase in the number of queries that are returning these rich answers.
So that's been rocking the world, certainly, because we've always thought of Google as the place, like Google's just the middleman, right? People ask a question, and Google simply sends them on to websites that potentially answer that question. But now we see more and more Google answering the question itself. And the reminder to everybody is that Google's mission in the world was never to organize the world's websites. Their mission was to organize the world's information, the world's data, and present it in the best possible way to help people find the answers that they need. That's what they go to Google for. So that's, people that weren't prepared for that, that were just sharing information that's available anywhere that a machine like Google can easily present the answer to, are getting their world rocked a little bit right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about social? Where are things at? Let's dive in on that one. Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, because they're all indexed. LinkedIn posts are indexed. Facebook posts are indexed, but we know that it doesn't go that deep. What's happening in social and search?
Well, a big piece of news that we've been talking a lot about recently was a huge search done jointly by BuzzSumo and Moz. Many viewers may be familiar. BuzzSumo is a great tool for finding out the social shares on any piece of content, any topic out there, what's being shared, who's sharing it, how much. So they use that data set in conjunction with Moz to look at content that was getting highly shared and content that was getting a lot of links, which we know from all our testing is still of primary importance in terms of your SEO power. And the assumption, there's been a broad assumption out there that that content that gets a lot of shares probably gets a lot of links too. But what the study found is that that is not the case. For the vast majority of content that's out there, the vast majority gets very few shares or links. So there's still a lot of just content that people are churning out content that nobody cares about. Okay? But even when you focus in on the content that does get one or the other, it's one or the other. Content tends to either get a lot of shares or a lot of links, but not both. There is a very small percentage of content that does get both, and it tends to be the things that we've been calling, higher quality content. It's richer, it's deeper, it goes more in depth, it says things that nobody else is saying, it has, has that incredible value. And there's a little more to it, the readability, etc.
Yes, so there's a couple of other things. There was another study done by a company called Chartbeat, and what they showed is there's also little correlation between articles that get lots of shares and articles that get read in any level of depth. And this, it was fascinating because they had one axis, the y-axis, which was number of shares, and the x-axis was reading time, and all the dots were over here on the left side. There was nothing or very little that had high reading time and high level of social shares. There were very little up in that quadrant. So it's fascinating to see this. And by the way, that's all the data you need to understand why search engines don't want to use social shares as a ranking signal. Right there, you can see the user behavior doesn't support it. But if you dig into, Mark talked about high quality content. So it's really important that the listeners get this right, because high quality content probably isn't what you would instinctively think it is. So let me walk you through it a little bit. So one thing that does really, really well is opinion-forming journalism. This is from the BuzzSumo Moz study. And that opinion-forming journalism, though, that was coming from papers like the New York Times, right? So these are places that have a very high level of established authority. So getting that shares, links, and reading together is associated, in that case, with high authority. The other thing that works really well, and doesn't appear to require as high a level of authority, is data-driven studies. Guess what we do here all the time at Stone Temple Consulting, right? That's what we're known for, is our data-driven studies. And then the final thing that they observed is long-form content. Now, first of all, I think it was something like 85% of all pieces of content are 1,000 words or less, if I remember right.
Yes, I remember that.
But the content that was getting both shares and links, on average, are over 3,000 words. I mean, we're talking about not long. We're talking long-form content with a lot of depth to it. So the bar is very high, right? But what I want to share is a saying that Tony Robbins is fond of, and it really helps, I think, capture this, which is People who do a good job with something typically get poor results. People who do a very good job get good results. People who do a great job get very good results. And people who do an outstanding job get outstanding results. So the curve is flat and kind of below, here's your effort level and here's your result level, till you get to outstanding and suddenly it meets. So striving to that top tier of effort and quality is really important.
And let me share one more study on here. I know we're giving a lot of content here, but I think this is so important for people to understand because it's busting a lot of myths out there, and it's confirming things that a number of us have been saying for some time that we've seen in our own experience, but now we're getting data behind it. A couple weeks ago, Russ Jones, who's now of Moz, asked myself and Garrett French to join him on a joint project where he took some tools that they have at Moz, and he found what he calls million-dollar content. And this is content that drives search traffic, the equivalent of you would pay $1 million or more to get through Google AdWords. So it's getting organic traffic, but you'd pay $1 million for it to get that otherwise. The surprising thing was he sliced out that content and took out the content that was from very low authority domains. So Moz domain authority 40 or more, which is not the highest authority levels. Okay, again, something that you think would be necessary to get that kind of organic reach on Google. And what we found, first of all, was that, again, the correlation with the BuzzSumo study, that most of that content didn't really have outstanding number of shares, social shares, outstanding number of links even in many cases, and yet it's ranking very highly on high traffic keywords on Google. Well, why? We start to look at it and you see that it is highly useful content. It's content that really goes the extra mile in answering whatever these users are searching for, and so the only conclusion you can make out of that is Google can figure that out. And it goes beyond just having links. It goes beyond just having social shares.
Like time on page, for instance, is what one of the
perhaps things like that, right?
Yeah.
So they're looking at other signals and saying, like, you know what? This content doesn't have a lot of domain authority. It doesn't maybe have a lot of great links, but people are loving it. People are liking it. And when we move it up in the search results, people click on it and they stay there and they're happy with it. So we move it up more. That seems to be happening. Just all the more qualification, like do good stuff, right?
Do good stuff. But we've talked about this for years. That difference, that top bit, is a patient's job and it's expertise, and then you've got to reach out and you've got to build relationships. You've got to build a community of people ready that trust, that they'll then spend the time to go and check it out. And it's all the things that we've been talking about for years. But it feels, and I felt the same in the last 9 months, it feels that things are changing. It does feel that the community is getting mature now. The networks is actually, if you look at where we are all, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're all over the place connecting with the people who are in these spaces. That wasn't there 2-3 years ago. It was platform centric. I think that's one of the big shifts, is that we're all there. So the next thing becomes you've got to find the things that you shine at, and like we're doing with the data-driven studies, you have to produce quality pieces of work. It's hard to get attention, for anyone to get attention, and to get the social share side of it, and because everything's everywhere. So you have to have, you know what I mean? It's like it's changed, and that's one of the big shifts I think on Google Plus. Is it isn't easy in the way it was easy to get a load of engagement. So what you're saying, I think, putting the things together, you've got to have something that people know you for. You've got to have the trust. You've got to have the it's not just one piece of content either. It's constant, like, working towards. As we've always said, you've got to work towards becoming an authority in something. But you've got to produce the best answer. And that's a really hard standard for people that are looking at this. So in a way, what advice would you give to the person starting out, and what advice would you give to somebody who's got a marketing budget?
So the first thing I want to start with, and you just kind of led me right into it, Martin, is, and I have my own cute way of phrasing it, be an expert or go home, right? I mean, just if you're not willing to make the investment to be an expert, then you shouldn't be trying to do this thing, right? And, as a business person, Okay, maybe you're a really good business person and you're employing an expert who does it on your behalf, and that's okay. But whoever's creating the content for you has to be able to create content that will withstand the scrutiny of other experts. And so that's just your first bar, right? And it's okay if it takes you a while to get there if you want to start building your presence by interacting with the community. And I'm not trying to, if you're not currently an expert and you're making the investment, you can share your journey of getting there with people. And social media is a great community. They'll embrace you. You can have great interactions with people. They'll help you learn. That's all cool. So nobody's born an expert in anything except maybe breathing. And then, so it's okay if it's a journey to get there, but you have to know that you must get there. And that's a really big part of that. And what goes along with that, with or without a budget, it's true in both cases, is when you first start and you're trying to get people to pay attention to content on your site, or you're trying to publish on other sites, you might not be at the point where you're yet ready to have a major journal cover what you're doing. And that, what I'll call a tier 1 site, right? I mean, the top few journals that cover your market space or websites or whatever they might be. But start with the third tier as long as it's good quality, if that's where you have to start. Build your reputation there. Set it up so you can get to the second tier as you grow. And then as you keep growing, but your target is always the top. It's for a local business, the top might be the local newspaper. It just doesn't necessarily have to be the New York Times or something, but you always have to have that in mind, that you have to get to this sort of elite level in what you're doing.
And one more thing about the content creation side, because I think we can finally make a definitive statement about a debate that's been going on for a long time, that is quality versus quantity. And you've heard people arguing on both sides. You've heard people arguing that, no, it's more important to have quantity, meaning, blog at least 3 times a week and keep churning out the content, and that Google likes freshness and all of that. But we have the data now, and what we're seeing is, frankly, just doing quantity, just cranking it out, doesn't get you much of anything at all. So whether you're a small business person or a major brand, it's worth it to take the time. If you have to sacrifice something, sacrifice the quantity for the quality. If you can put out just even occasionally something that is extraordinary, something that's better, as Rand Fishkin says, it has to be 10 times better than the top 10 results that are in Google now for whatever whatever question you're answering, whatever searching you're doing. That takes time to do, but if you can invest the time and do that, it's going to yield you much more benefits in the long run than just turning out 30, pieces just to put words up on a page.
Yeah.
So, and then take it one more step, because you were chatting about this earlier, Martin, and that is that it's really important also, as you're trying to work your way up, to be building relationships with other people.
Absolutely.
And both influencers and peers and people who are in earlier stages, you really have to view the whole funnel of people and try to build relationships across all of it. The influencers are obviously interesting because when they share your stuff, they can put it in front of a lot of other people's eyes and other people's audiences, as I like to call it, and that's great, and get you exposure. So having that reputation with them is very useful. But don't forget the people who are your peers and strong relationships there, and don't forget to help other people who are up and coming along the way. Viewing that as a whole ecosystem that you're kind of working is a very important part of this.
See, the mistake that people might make right now is hearing what we said a few minutes ago about that study, the BuzzSumo study, that a lot of content doesn't get much social shares, and that content can do really well without a lot of social shares, a lot of links. The mistake people might think is that, oh, I can ignore social media then. It doesn't matter, it doesn't really make any difference. Quite the opposite. The problem is that people have been looking to social media for the wrong thing. They've been thinking like just posting a lot of stuff on social media, being active on social media is going to make my SEO just take off, or make my content take off. And it's what we know. We can say now, like, that's probably not true. So where social media has its value, as Eric is just saying, is in the relationship building, gaining those relationships, gaining trust and authority with real people who can become the advocates, the boosters, the sharers of your content, the recommenders of what you do, the people who mention your name when conversation comes up and says, like, who should we be looking at? Who should we be listening to? We had just a quick example. Yesterday we were meeting with all of our employees here, and one of the questions, we have kind of an occasional time we gather with Eric, and it's open forum, Q&A. One of the questions that came up was, who should we be following? You know, if we want to learn the business, especially for new people that are coming in our company, who should we be paying attention to online? And a number of names were mentioned. And that's significant because those names are not by accident. They are people who've worked hard at building reputation, at building relationships, friendships that make them get mentioned, and that's extremely valuable.
I think that picks up on what Peter Felton's just asked, but I'll ask it again. Where are you at with social signals? Oh, I've got an echo. Hold on. Not sure where that just came on. Okay. So what about influencers engaging on content versus other people? Mere mortals, he says, but you know.
Yeah. So it's really about the audience that they are able to get you in front of more than anything else. We don't believe that having an influencer share your post is something that Google looks at directly. However, because they have large audiences, it's good for your reputation when they share your stuff. And in our experience, when you've built the right kind of content and the right kind of relationships, in spite of the Moz BuzzSumo study, it will actually help you get links, which does drive your SEO directly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've spoken to Rand Fishkin about the BuzzSumo Moz study, and he agrees with me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's the one who published it. It's just too many people are viewing the content and the relationships the wrong way, which is why it's not working for most.
Because they're trying to construct something as an outcome, in a way, isn't it? As opposed to, hey, this is going to be a long game, you're going to build relationships, it's a natural flow. You know, you can ping people into something, and if you guys plus mention me, or I know that I've got to pay attention. I know that you're just going, hey, look, you haven't seen this. This is going to be of interest to you, and it's probably going to be interested to the audience. That's how it works. But we're further along than some people. I know that some people are still trying, let's say, to get to a place where they feel comfort, and they try and get the relationship. It takes a long time. And we talked with David Amland about this. It takes a lot of interactions to build the trust between people that you can then naturally just go, of course I'm going to share that. That's it, because what you're doing is you're saying, hey, this is important to me, can you share my stuff? But you're doing it in a way, and the same as if I did it with you guys, which is going, look, this is a reciprocal network here. Everybody gains by the shares happening, because everyone gets good quality information because you put the work in to make sure the content is good. Which is what we're saying from the start. Right. We understand that, you know.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I mean, the thing is, instead of focusing on the outcome, focus on the ecosystem.
Yeah. There you go. That's a quote there.
Yeah,
okay.
You need to quote that, and somebody needs to stop and think about that for a moment, because it's something that Eric's been saying a lot, and I think it's quite profound, that word ecosystem. Think about that deeply, because what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is an interactive living system in which all the parts are interdependent in different ways and in different means.
And they're all important.
And that's the way we build marketing, and we build marketing strategy. We realize that we are not building, it's not a machine where you just put in, get the gear turning on this side and the gear turns out that side and the widget comes out. It's a living organism, and you have to keep all parts of it healthy, and you have to pay attention to it. And it's literally a living organism in that the most important part of all of this that people forget about in digital marketing again and again is the humans. It's all at the end of the day about humans being connected to information that's helpful to them, that solves their pains, their problems. So there's not going to be a mechanism. There's not going to be something like, it's not how many tweets per day do I put out, or how many links do I get. All that stuff is whatever value it has. If you're not thinking about it in terms of that living organic ecosystem that you're trying to build around your brand and around your audience, you're going to miss it.
Right.
That's great.
Yep.
Now, we've got 5 minutes left, so I wanted to come to Eric, unless you've got something to say. And I know there's some questions on the thread. We might have to drag people up. We might drag you guys into the thread, because the last 5 minutes I wanted to talk about the future, Eric, because we were chatting. It's going to get interesting, a bit strange. Do you want us to talk about where you think things are going to be in 3-5 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and there's a few ways to approach it, but I'm going to start with talking about the world we're used to. We're used to a thing called the World Wide Web, which uses a browser where we go to websites and we pull down content. Well, already on devices like these, the browser is no longer the dominant app, and there's other applications that people are using. And the reason why this is such an important shift is because in a browser-based world, you can have an advertising ecosystem where you do a search, and then you get a page of results, and you might click on one of the ads, and that's how you monetize a search engine. In this world, that's already becoming difficult because it's hard to fit a lot of ads in here, and users are going to be somewhat intolerant of it. Layer on top of that, that by the year 2020, that if you looked at total amount of devices, internet-connected devices, many of you have probably heard of the Internet of Things, and this is what people are talking about. Internet-connected devices that are sold in the year 2020, only 1/3 of them will be a phone, a tablet, or a PC. The remaining 2/3 will be things like smartwatches, your internet-connected TV, your refrigerator, your thermostat, your grill, your car, and all of those are going to use voice input because there is no keyboard. And most of them will give you a voice output. So how do you advertise on that, right? I mean, and how do you manage that? And the advertising side is important just because you have to understand that the search engine player has to have a way to make money, and then you have Apple using ad blocking, to make it even harder in some respects. All those things together, plus the fact that the voice interface with the primary interface actually steps beside two of the primary things, or the two primary things that caused Google to become a dominant player on the World Wide Web. So I mean, that's a really big deal. One more thing to add to that, and that is that having information on your user in this environment where you don't have a browser, you have something else going on, is going to be more essential than ever in order to have a valid content and advertising model. Facebook has it. Google doesn't. And Google is struggling to catch up in this regard. By the way, I'm not predicting the demise of Google. I'm just saying that if there's ever a time in the past 15 years where we've been able to identify a legitimate challenger, that's now. We could see the legitimate challenger. We don't know how it could unfold. Google may well still win, but a lot is going to change over a 5-year period of time.
Yeah, and I think with Android,
big mouthful.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that I experienced when I was in Silicon Valley having Android TV. And that experience has changed my view of what's going to come for advertising, for the Internet of Things, for the connectivity. And it's very different to what people are thinking. And it's what he says. It's based on voice, and it's based on everything going via this one central device, it would seem. Advertising, YouTube. Video, there's no web pages. There's none of that because it's a different sort of interface. So again, I think that thinking video, this is why we're getting more and more into AdWords, because I think that we've got to realize that it's going to shift with the times, but how else are we going to get people's attention? We're not going to be able to do it through the text, and we know the browsing has changed. So I think that what you're saying, that is going to be a whole new adventure. So I know Travis hasn't said much. We also know that with augmented reality, that as Facebook starts to push into VR, Google invested, $500 million alongside a few other people into Magic Leap. So that's going to be another area. We don't know how it's going to go. But again, it's going to change potential advertising, potential punctuation, potential personalization as we're walking down the street, and we are able to gain access to an overlay, another world within this world, essentially. And I think that these things, we can hardly even imagine what it means. But if we're able to call up something, we might find we're then advertised to once we get information. We don't know yet. But they're going to have to make money from it somehow.
Yes, they are.
They are. On that note, we're at the 30-minute mark. Last thoughts for everybody. Mark Traphagen first. Travis has been very quiet today.
Yeah, my one closing thought is let Travis speak. Hashtag let Travis speak.
Oh, he's gone quiet now. See, Mark, you shouldn't laugh so much. Go on.
Okay. The main take I'd want people to have from this half hour we've had is that a lot of the things that you know to do instinctively, if you're a good business person, if you're a good marketer in your natural marketplace, keep it up. That's not wrong. It's heading in the right direction. You know, it's not as important that you learn a bunch of tricks for online. Like I said again, you know, everybody wants it to be a machine that I pull the right levers and magic happens online, but that you do what your grandfather and grandmother knew how to do with their corner store. You know, that you make those relationships, that you create value for people, that you become the resource that people have to talk about because it's so much better than anything else that's out there. Those things are more essential than ever. They're going to work more than ever, and their platform. Let Google struggle with the changes that are going to happen to Google. You need to be thinking about holistic ecosystem marketing that is platform agnostic and that will take you into the next realm of years.
Excellent.
So to build on top of that, another theme that people need to think about is that, you know, beginning with the millennials, the people who, you know, got to 18 years of age around about 2000, as we call them, they've grown up in a connected generation. And what that does, it makes them more patient, makes them more demanding of high quality, more focused on true and deep authenticity, and all things that, you know, people who were alive 50, 100 years ago would have said that they wanted. But what's changed is the information is instantly available. So if you're being inauthentic, they can just do this, and 5 seconds later they'll have someone authentic, they're connected to them, or someone with high quality, or someone who has faster service. The choices are so infinitely available and so immediately available that it really dials up the demand for that level of expertise and focus on what you're good at, and emphasizing that, just as Mark just said.
Awesome. Love that. Everybody, that was Mark Traphagen, Eric Enger from Stone Temple Consulting, and Travis, he hasn't said so little on a hangout ever. Everybody, take care. We'll do our best to come to the event thread. See you all next time. That was the future of search. Thank you, Mark, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody watching. Still live.